everybody, welcome back to my channel. I'm Anna. Happy New Year, guys. I think the last video I made was like at the end of December, so we are now officially in 2020 and gotta say, it feels good. I don't know what this year has in store. It clearly has a lot in store if you just kind of scroll on your phone for a while, but for me, personally, I don't know what this year has in store. So I am nervous and also excited to see all of the possibilities, not only for me, but for this channel as well. I have had a couple of you guys reach out to me for reading poetry, and that makes me super happy. So thank you guys for doing that. In light of the new year, in light of sort of maybe some self-reflection, I've decided to make a video on my favorite poetry books of 2019. I read a lot of poetry last year, but there were really just a few that stood out to me that really were memorable and touched my heart in a special way, and so I want to talk about those today. So without further ado, let's get started. So the first book that I want to talk about is a book that I read at the beginning of 2019, and that book is called Storyteller by Harper Nichols. It's 100 poem letters, and that was such a great way to start off the year after sort of like the train wreck that 2018 was. It was really encouraging and uplifting, and something that I think was important for me to read for the new year. It put me in a better perspective of the future and sort of what the year was going to bring. So the way that that book works is that all of the poems are addressed to specific people, but not in terms of names, but in terms of just like to the girl who is dealing with heartbreak, or to the girl who's anxious about her future, which was me and kind of still is me. And then the poem would be encouraging that person for what is to come. And that was just that was such a different format of poetry than I usually read, and it was so refreshing and uplifting, and I really enjoyed that. In fact, it was my plan to reread that this new year. Unfortunately, it's not with me, so I don't know how I'm gonna do that. Maybe find it on Kindle or something. But so I would definitely recommend that for like a New Year's poetry book, of just putting you in that mindset of like, okay, the future is coming, but it is gonna be okay. No matter like what happens, it's gonna be fine. It's gonna be okay. Like if we can make it through another year of 2019, then there's nothing saying that we can't make it through this one. So yeah, for sure, go check her out. She also does a lot of like visual stuff on Instagram with her poetry, which is, it's just so aesthetically pleasing, and I really like her. So I'll put her Instagram in the description so you guys can go check her out. Also, in terms of Harper Nichols, she is coming out with a new book in 2021 that I am super excited for. So I know that like a lot of people are making their most anticipated of 2020, but that is going to be one of my most anticipated for 2021. So I guess I'm getting a head start, if you want to put it that way. My next book is one that's done by an author that's pretty well known. I bought her book in a series, and it is Lullabies by Leav. I read pretty much the entire series of her books, so I got a bunch of them. I think there was only one that I didn't get. So I had read Memories, The Universe of Us, and I think I had started Love and Misadventure, and this one was just the one that really stuck out to me, that really hit me in the feels, and really just brought out like this emotional side, and I really liked that. I have notes literally all over the book because I love how she chooses her words, and I feel like for all poets, when we write, not every poem is, or even every collection, it's going to be like that one that like hits home. I think the beauty of that is, for everybody, the thing that hits home is going to be different. So for me, it wasn't so much her other books, but it was this one. And maybe for somebody else, it would have been another one of her books. But for me, Lullabies really struck home in so many different ways. It's also quite a long book, but don't let that discourage you because her poems are quite short. I think one of the things that I like a lot about Leav is that somehow through her short poems, she's able to create this intense vulnerability. She addresses such specific concepts that you would never, that at least for me in writing, it would take me pages to talk about whatever concept it is, but for her, she's able to condense it into something that's a page or even half a page, and I'm left stunned by how well she's been able to expand on that in such a, you know, concise way. And so I really loved Lullabies. I would definitely, you know, if you're looking at recommending poetry to people, this one would be one that I like. Also, follow her on Instagram because she's really nice. And I think I remember in either a book haul or a review that I did for her, I mentioned that she lives in New Zealand in a little house by the sea, and I was really jealous because that's like my ideal life. And a year has passed and nothing has changed. I'm still jealous and I still feel like she's living my best life. But somebody's got to, because it's definitely not going to be me anytime soon. So yeah, check out Leav, check out Lullabies, and let me know what you think. All right, the next one is also one that really blew my mind last year. I made like a 30-minute poetry book review on this one, and it, like, the original like raw footage of that was way longer. I managed to cut it down for you guys because I understand that listening to someone prattle on about poetry for 30 minutes is kind of hard. So yeah, but this, there was no way that I could speak any less about it because it really blew my mind. And so that book is Fierce Fairytales by Nikita Gill. This book is amazing, guys. I don't think I can say that enough, and I highly recommend it for anyone who's into fairy tales and mythology, but more along the lines of retelling certain fairy tales, because this is what she does for this book, and it was amazing. Not only that, but it's got artwork in it, like some really good artwork, and the cover is gorgeous. It's blue, and just everything about this book to me was so good. So what she does is she takes the normal fairy tales that we know and grew up on, and she kind of turns them on their heads, not even in the grim fairy tales kind of way where it like gets dark, but in a different way where it's like, let's consider this fairy tale from a different point of view. Let's consider how things would have been different if the story would have been told this way. She does that especially with villains, like female villains like Maleficent and Mother Gothel, and pretty much all of like the wicked stepmother and Cinderella. She does all of these things, and for me, I'm really interested in the idea of villains and monsters and how they are portrayed in our society and how they are beginning to be changed in terms of how we see them. And I really love the idea of, okay, well, let's look at how this villain or monster got to the point where we considered them as such. And I think when you do that, a lot of times you realize that, one, the villain or the monster is not so different from, you know, yourself, from the rest of humanity, and two, had that villain monster person had been shown more compassion, more kindness, maybe they wouldn't have turned out as what the product that they are today. So I think what it does is it brings a lot more responsibility to society as how we treat people, and then it also is a great way of self-reflecting of like, okay, but I, you know, maybe given the right circumstances, I could be just as capable of that, but you know, I'm not, thank God, but it's a good way of like self-reflecting, things like that. And I love thinking about things like that. And so yeah, this was a book that really just redefined poetry for me this year. And she has a bunch of other books out, but this was the one that I think is one of her best. And that being said, she has a new book out called, I think it's called Great Goddess, and I can't wait to get it because I know it has to do a lot with mythology, which I love, especially Greek mythology. Like, that's my thing. So I can't wait to get that book and read it, and I will for sure review it because I have a feeling that it's going to be amazing. My next book is by one of my favorite poets. His name is John Lupin, the Poetry Bandit, and I also don't have the hard copy of his book with me because I left it at home. So I will also put the picture of it right next to me, but the book is called You Only Love Me When I'm Suffering. John Lupin is such a great writer. For all that he has to do, for him to be able to sit down and write multiple poetry collections, it just shows the love and dedication that he has for poetry, and I really appreciate it. One of my favorite poetry books of all time is his first book called My Sober Little Moon, and that book slayed me. I think that was like in 2018 or 2017. I feel so bad every time that I bring him up because I continuously fail to do a poetry book review on his stuff, and the reason for that, because there is a reason, is because one, I have a feeling that video is going to last about an hour, and then two, I also want to go back and reread his work because it's been a little while since I've read at least his first book, and I just want to do that video justice. I feel like I really want to delve into, you know, the themes and the concepts and how it's changed and how he's changed, and also how it has affected me and how brilliant I think it is. And so, and also I'm debating on like including all of his work or doing it one by one, and so it's definitely something that I'm going to try and do this year for sure, because I think it's a crying shame that I haven't done it already. But You Only Love Me When I'm Suffering was one of those books that was really a hard hitter for me. It really just sort of expanded a lot on pain and kind of how people treat you when you're in pain, and kind of moving on from that. It was really powerful for me. I remember like writing so much in that book of just how much I related. That poetry like got me, like it understood things that, you know, I've been through. I may not relate exactly exactly with what the poet has gone through, but the emotions that he is talking about is definitely something that I relate with, and I think a lot of people relate with. So yes, You Only Love Me When I'm Suffering by John Lupin. It's an amazing book. The next one that I have is one that was such a cool project to like come across. I think I bought this in Barnes & Noble, and it was just sort of like an impulse buy because I really liked the title and the cover, and it also has a bunch of my favorite poets in there, so I thought, why not? I bought it, was not disappointed. So that is Crown Anthology, which was edited by Analog de Leon and Gabriel Sage. The foreword is by Tyler Knott Gregson, who is also such a great poet. He did it justice, man. He really, his writing is just so ethereal, and I love how he writes. And so this is a collection of about 200 poems, all from different artists, all from people from all over the world, and literally such a good poem because it brings so many different perspectives. It brings so many different styles of writing, so many different emotions and experiences, and it's all in this one book. And I thought that was such an interesting project for people like Analog de Leon and Gabriel Sage to compile. I know it must have taken such a long time, but this is such a good book for people who want to sort of dip their toe into poetry but don't know who to choose. This is a great book for people because there's about 100 different poets in here. So if you like a specific one, then you know, hey, I need to go check that person out. If you don't like one, then you won't go and spend money on their book if you don't think that you'll like their poetry. And also, and I remembered I did a book talk on this as well, so go check that out because I go into more depth, but it's divided into about five or six sections, and each title of the section is from I think either a classical novel or like a poetic, like some older poetic theme in the past, and I love that. I love when two genres mix, like prose and poetry. That was just a really cool thing that I noticed. I also liked how this book was more directional, like it moved from a place of, say, darkness, and then moved into like this encouraging, sort of more hopeful end, and that was something that I really appreciated. I love things that have direction, that have movement, and this was a book that definitely did that. And so yeah, this is one I also really highly recommend. So my last book is one that is really near and dear to my heart. I read it towards the end of 2019, and once again, just like Storyteller, it was perfect for the time of year and also for my mental space, and that is The Future by Neil Hilborn. And Neil is such a great poet, I have to say, and I think I said in one of my book hauls for 2019, I found him on Button Poetry, and he does a lot of slam poetry, a lot of spoken word, and it is just so amazing to watch him like actually perform his work, because it's a lot different from reading it on the page. The Future is one that kind of goes through different places in America, because he was writing this while he was on a tour, and so he wrote while he was in different places, and he wrote 2 different places in America, and so it's almost like a poetry road trip in that sense. It's kind of like when someone writes something in a specific place and then like leaves it behind for somebody else to find. That's how I kind of feel about this book. But it also talks a lot about his struggles in life, mental health, relationships, sort of rebuilding, things like that, and it's just a really beautiful kind of coming of age, but also uplifting at times book. It's funny at times, because he has a specific sense of humor, and I just find it funny at times when he describes things. The last poem is called The Future, and it's probably my favorite one. I really love this poem, and also I love that it's longer poetry, because a lot of times I read poetry that is very short, and I appreciate that, but I also really appreciate longer poetry, because when I write, I tend to sort of go on and try and explore different imagery or metaphors or things like that, and so it's really nice to know that like if I should one day publish my really long poetry, it will be read by people, because, you know, he does that a lot as well. So yeah, this was published also by Button Poetry. They also publish a ton of other really, really talented writers and poets like Hanif Abdurraqib, Olivia Gatwood, Rudy Francisco, another one of my favorites. So yeah, go check out Button Poetry and check out Neil Hilborn. The Future is such a great book, guys. So that is all I have for you guys today. Thank you so much for watching and for supporting my channel. Thank you for everyone who's reached out, left a comment, sent an email. I really appreciate hearing from you guys and hearing how you guys are enjoying the channel. Please continue to do that. I really want to grow this channel this year and sort of continue to foster a community where we can all talk about poetry and share our likes and our dislikes about them. I want to read more poetry, so if you guys have any recommendations, please send them to me, because I would love to learn about new poetry. Yeah, so have a happy 2020. For those of you starting school on Monday, like I am, good luck, and I will